All right, there's a lot of ways to build your business, to grow your business, right? But like our guest will tell us today, just build a good business. All right, welcome to the Field Famous Podcast, brought to you by FieldRoutes, a show that shines a light on the field service industry and the dedicated professionals that grind every day on their journey to success. I am your host, Christopher Fasano. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the best way to receive new episodes of the Field Famous Podcast is to subscribe on your favorite pod player. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you go to listen to podcasts, you will find this one. So subscribe or follow, as they call it now. The show is also available on video format. You can go to YouTube if you prefer to watch this interview rather than just listen. You can do that on YouTube, so subscribe on the YouTube channel. And last but not least, please leave us a 5-star review and tell your friends that you're loving the show. That'll help others find the show. So our guest for today on the Field Famous Podcast is Andy Deering. Andy's one of the co-owners of ServicePro, which was ServSuite, which is now ServSuite by FieldRoutes. We'll get into a little bit of that evolution in a little bit, but he's now the general manager of ServSuite by FieldRoutes, and we have him with us today. Andy, welcome to the Field Famous Podcast.
Hello. How are we doing?
Good. We're good. So Andy and
Thank you for having me.
No problem, man. Andy and I met at Pest World for the first time, and we did a little sort of brief version of this interview. It was fun for me because I got to learn a little bit more about Andy. I know Andy's got a history in this field service, in particular pest control, literal history, family history, and career history. So he's a really interesting guest with a lot of perspective. So why don't we start, Andy, with introducing yourself to the audience about who you are and give a little context about where you got started.
Yeah. Thank you. Started in the industry a really long time ago. Today, I am general manager at ServSuite. But originally, ServSuite was created and generated under the company ServicePro, who has now been acquired by ServiceTitan. And ServiceTitan also acquired FieldRoutes. So now both of us, both software platforms are running under the FieldRoutes company name. So long story short, goodness sakes, over 25 years ago, my father decided to start a software company. And really where he got to that was really at the time, he owned lawn care and pest control company. So he actually did the service in the field. So I grew up, me and my sister grew up around the industry. So as kids, I was on a truck running a route, spraying lawns, killing bugs, doing the work. And then when I got out of school, I actually worked full time into the service business at that point.
Okay.
And really, I had a lot of knowledge just being a young kid around the industry, but then went full go at it, in my adult career starting out. And then we started this software thing, wrote the software to run our own company. And so really started on a very small scale right out of the gate. At this point, the software didn't do much at first. And then over the years, some buddies in the industry kind of saw what we were doing. We added to it and we decided to take it to market. So it started taking off. And this is going way back. I mean, this is back like when Windows was first coming on the market. And so it was just, it was a while ago. So,
well, let me ask you this. Let me ask
the world was changing.
Let me ask you this before we go, because there's a lot of things in there that to be interesting. So the first thing is, this is in your family. Your dad was doing this before there was ever thoughts of software, right? Because I imagine that was never like, let's get into this pest and lawn care thing so we can build the software. I imagine that wasn't the primary thing your dad was thinking. So you're doing this, you're in there, you're doing the services, and then is it, I think there's a better way to manage this craziness, or I think we can build something because of the knowledge we have. Was it both? What really was the driving force behind let's look at this software piece?
Yeah, good point. It was to run our business better.
Okay.
So at first, I mean, it wasn't to be a large software company or take it to market or make that our primary business. That was not where our heads were at that time. He looked at other software products on the market, and at that time, there were products, but they were, maybe DOS or like a flat file, just very primitive type situations, and Windows was hitting the market at that point, which really just opened up the capabilities of what you could do in software in general, right? And we took advantage of it. So we wrote it for ourselves, and just as time went on, we had, again, buddies in the industry and showed it to them, and then we started selling it to a few friends. It went pretty well. And then he had the opportunity to sell that service business. It had multiple locations at that point, the operations, and it was a very interesting time back then when it come to acquisitions. So it really worked to his favor. So he says, I think I'm going to take this deal. And he says, let's go ahead and make a run at the software world. And we related well to it. Growing up around the industry, we ran with it.
It was just like another step. So then your dad, so when you started writing this thing, by the way, I think it's when you say we just started writing it, like you didn't go to school for coding and writing software, correct? Like that was not a thing. You didn't do it on the weekends, like for fun or something like that. No, right?
No, none of us. Nobody in the family actually codes. And my sister's very good at data queries and things, but none of us actually are engineers or coders or do any of that. We just know what the software should do. We understand the industry,
right?
And how it can help service companies.
Yep. So your dad still so you started this dabbling in this software, but he still had the service business. It wasn't a right away thing, is what you're saying, right? You were using the software a bit, you were growing, you were doing a little bit, and then it was piece by piece. He wasn't out right away.
That's right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It was just for us. It was to make our business more efficient at that time, and then started going well, and we ran with it. We decided to make it was our primary business. It has been for quite a long time.
And then that was when? So that was what I was going to ask. How long was it in your family as the sole, as the business? How long was that?
So the company was in business over 25 years of actually selling software.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So what I love about Andy is so many perspectives, and so I want to get into some of them. So he's obviously been in the industry for a long time. He's in multiple roles in the service side, then getting into business side, starting up something, and with the software, you have to know what the industry, what they're doing, what the shops are doing, and how they're working, because you're trying to provide a product that's going to better their business. Because if you're going to grow, they have to grow, right? So you also were involved in seeing different acquisitions in your career, right? And building businesses to a level where they can be either bought or taken by somebody else. And I know for a lot of people in industry and pest and lawn, that is a goal for them, right? A goal is a lot of people get into this to build a business that they can sell at some point in time. So my question is, in your experience in talking with people, is it something you set out right away and say, that's my goal, I'm going to do it? And if you do, and if that is your goal, you're going to do it a little bit differently, run your business, than others, or is your advice just run a good business? So talk to me a little bit about that angle.
We just ran a good business. Honestly, our intentions really, we never thought we were going to sell the company. We never thought we were going to partner up with anybody. It wasn't in the plans. And then as time went on, we started noticing, software just continued to really expand and grow and just sort of boom into the service industry, and not just the industries we served, which was primarily lawn and pest, but we saw it in HVAC, we saw it, electrical, plumbing, we saw it just across a lot of service industries. So what we started seeing is there was really a massive consolidation going on in softwares. And we just really wanted to make the decision long-term, what's going to be best for our customers, and what we saw is when we decided to partner with ServiceTitan was, what's going to be best for our customers long-term, who's going to be in this for the long haul. And we still saw consolidation going on with different softwares. So we had concern, like, if we sell to one company and they sell again, that's probably not going to be best for our customers. And, with ServiceTitan's model, we just felt like, that's not in their model, right? They're going to run a good business. They're going to grow, and that's what their goals are going to be.
That's what the goal is. So,
and that's what it has been.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So now
no,
you're fine. So that's on the software side, but from a service business, from someone's if I own a pest shop and I'm going into this and I'm saying to myself, you know what, I'm going to grow this thing and I'm going to sell it one day to one of these bigger brands, and that's my game. Is it still the same advice in that regard? Run a good, sound business, or is it pay more attention to margin? Like, do you do things differently? No, right? You just run a good business and you can get to whichever end point you want.
Yeah. Run a good business. It was even in our service industry many years ago. We had the same mindset. The intentions were not to sell. We just ran a good business. We ran a profitable business. Make sure you really take care of your churn rates. Make sure customers are happy. That's the business we ran, and it was the same thing. We ran into an opportunity. The software thing was going well, and that's why we made the change.
Yeah. So you obviously did this with your family. A lot of, I don't know, maybe a lot is strong, but there's a significant number of these pest control company or lawn shops that are within a family, right? This is something that we come across a lot. And so I guess, any advice there for anybody that's running right now with their family? They got sisters and brothers and fathers and mothers, and everyone's involved. Did you find it to be particularly challenging or rewarding, and anything you can offer in that regard since you did it for so long?
Yeah. First and foremost, as you said, run a good business. Make sure you're staying profitable. Make sure you have happy customers. If you have happy customers, your churn rates are going to be very good. And even if you're not planning to sell, I mean, just kind of business 101, you just want to make sure you run a healthy company. And if you're running a healthy company that's profitable, that's continuing to grow, then what you're going to see is your business is valuable, right? If it's growing and customers are staying with you and they're happy and you have good employees that are happy, that's a healthy business. So no matter what kind of industry you're in or what you're doing, there's value in that. And that value may be in the money you're making every day in that business right now, or that value may be down the road when you go to sell that business. It's more valuable. I would really encourage them to not veer too far off the beating path and get too outside of the industry. Just make sure creativity's good, but make sure you're falling within the mold of the business that one day if you do decide to sell, you're appealing to other pest control or lawn care companies that maybe have somewhat of a similar model as you, right? So they want to. If they're going to buy those accounts, they want to kind of mold into a little bit of how they operate today. Mm-hmm.
Right. Rather than, I see what you're saying. So it's good to try to stay one ahead and get ahead, but you don't want to get too far out of what might be a norm. I'm using the word norm. Maybe that's not what I mean, but I see what you're saying, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you... I'm just it's always fascinating to me because I have two brothers and they're all entrepreneurial in their own way, and we're always going back and forth. Did you guys... were you able to contain it? Like when you got together with your family, your sister, your dad, and you sat down, or your families together, you talking about business, or were you guys able to just shut it down at some point and just be a family?
There's always overlap there.
Right. Always.
I guess
right?
I would be, I guess I'd be lying if I said, Thanksgiving Day, we try to keep it Thanksgiving Day, but I think at some point there's always a little bit of intermingle of business that kind of falls in there. But on the holidays and things, we kept it in check. But, through the work week and even talking on a personal level, we're talking all the time. It was just always constant conversations. And I think in our minds, we did keep that separate. Some families can't do that.
Right. I imagine it's your life, it is your life, but work is a big focus of your life and a big part of your day. And if that part of your life and day is also with your family, it's a part of their life and day. So it's very difficult when things are part of your life for it to not come up. I've always found I've worked in a business, a couple that are family owned and operated, and I saw some of the dynamic, and when all is great, it's great. But when it's those rough times, times it gets real interesting, right? Because that's really where, because that'll carry over. So, and I know in this industry, there's a lot of those shops that have that going. So it's always good to hear those, to talk about those stories. From someone that's been in this and watching this progress, like with different technologies and different ways to approach it and different ways they sell, and subscription model plans and recurring revenue, all these things that are going on. Like, I'm wondering where you've seen the biggest change in the industry from when you were riding that truck, when you were going out there, where you see some changes, where you see there's some core commonalities, and we can talk whether that's service oriented or technical side, but I'm just from your perspective looking back, what do you see?
Wow. Well, I've got a little gray hair right now, so I've been doing this quite a while, and there's been a lot of change, right? So if I had to boil that down and just sort of skinny it down to what are some of the biggest changes I've seen, I've seen the industry, and I'm talking a span of 20 years, get really good at recurring revenue. And boy, there's a lot of things that fall into that statement. I've just really seen them say, does it make more sense to go to the quarterlies or go to the monthlies from a profitability standpoint? Does it make more sense to bill a customer and combine services and just bill them out an even monthly rate, even though I may only go out quarterly, or, in different months I'm doing more or less things. So they've really caught on to the spreading out the payment plans, if you will, right? Where it's an even monthly bill, and they've seen their growth rates grow and their retention rates improve by going to that. And then what I've also seen, if I had to go into that next subject of, I would say in the last 10 years, is mobility. So, way back in the day, and some people still do, they mass print those jobs that, they hand the technician a piece of paper and say, go do X, Y, or Z. And, now we have mobile devices that are syncing down the jobs that they can start and stop that job. And it allows a service company to operate on a dime, right? So if the customer calls and can't be done today, they just click a couple buttons in the computer and boom, it's updated to the technician, and they know they don't go to that next. They go somewhere else.
Right. I see what you see. So mobile, they're literally mobile. Things change, they get update, they go. They're not just have to come back to the office and see what's going on.
Well, and not just syncing in mobile. It's like now you take pictures, right? A picture's what's the saying? 1,000 words. Yeah. And so that really gives a good description of what they did or the problem they're seeing they need to fix. So I really feel like mobility is, aside from recurring revenue, the two of them have got to be, two of the biggest. And then I would say probably, if I had to just, off the top of my head, throw a third in there, it's customer communication. You've got clients going onto the web portals, seeing information, getting reporting, about their account. Maybe there's, barcoding or data collection going on in the field, or you're marking down what materials or chemicals were applicated for regulatory purposes. I just could go on and on and on, right? But those three, for me, over the stretch of 25 years, those are the three biggies. Yeah. And there's so much more to add into that.
I'm sure. But, I'm sure. I mean, what's interesting to me, the recurring one is interesting. And for someone that's seen this, when you first were starting in this, I imagine, was it mainly like a one-time, like these things are thought to be one-time services? Like I still remember, and still now, like when marketing for these companies, that the biggest challenge, especially when you're talking residential, is to get them to think about this pest control or lawn, whatever it is, as a proactive measure. That what you don't want to do is you don't want it to be reactive, where it's like, I always say it's like your health. You don't want to wait till you have a problem, because it could be worse than going and getting your physical every year. Like, so what I tried to do is talk about the home like it's your body and it's like a physical. And you wouldn't wait for your body to get real sick before you get it fixed. You'd want it to be healthy so that, you ward it off. So I'm wondering, like, what is that how did that change over time with you? Did you see those conversations from the sales side? And, I'm just curious to see how you guys try to flip that narrative a bit.
Service businesses have tried to generate more predictable revenue in any way they can. And I wouldn't say that's the number one factor as to why you've seen it go reoccurring, but it's definitely one they enjoy. But I think leaning back on the comments you just made, it's like, okay, I can come out and I can treat your property one time, but the reality is that's only good for so long.
Right.
Right. And it's a little more work for me to do it the first time than it is going to be for going back on an ongoing basis. So when they look at that, they've gotten creative to say, all right, if I'm going to come out and do it one time for you at all, it's just an example, it's $300, right? But if you sign up on my recurring services, I'm going to come out for $125 every quarterly, month, or whatever, right? So they're offering, a higher price tag on those one times and say we'll do it, but the reality is that's really not going to solve your problem long term. Right. It's the same, and then the same thing in lawn care. Look, fertilizer is only going to last so long, right? So historically, they've tried to get customers on, way back in the day, 4 applications a year, and then it went to 5, and now it's very commonly 6, right? They're really getting good at spanning that out at the right time frame with the weather and the seasons and depending on the state you're in, and just making sure they're making it as year-round and as repetitive as possible. So what does that do to their business, right? So now they're like, okay, well, now we have planned work out there. Well, how many technicians does it take to do that work? How many trucks do we need to go buy? And then it starts making their business predictable is what it does. Right. And you
start to normalize some of the cash flow swings and revenue swings, because especially in seasonality, right? If you're waiting for all of those calls in the summertime, the reactive ones, your shoulder months are going to be real or low, right? And then you got to manage all that, and with retention and keeping everyone happy, you got to make sure that you got business. So I noticed that as one of the bigger, like when you come in and you treat a problem and it goes away, but they're still paying for it. So there's this weird psychological thing that's going on. It's like, I'm paying for something, but I don't see you all the time, but it's supposedly working, right? But I imagine when someone looks to cut, if someone's in a situation where they're like, I need to cut money, where can I cut from? That's probably one that they're going to look at, right? Because it's like, they're not here all the time. But I guess this is where it's more of the, okay, but when there's the brakes are on, when we take them off, things will start to come back, right? So I guess you can't be afraid, and maybe this is a question, you can't be afraid to talk to the customer that way and letting them know that this needs to be an ongoing thing, right? That it's not just going to be fixed right away.
Yeah, that's correct. That's right.
Yeah, and like you don't, and it's okay. Like some people are like, no, you don't want to say it, like, no, because then they feel like we're not doing the job. And I'm like, but that's the job, right? The job is keeping it at bay.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. It's you wanted me to come out and solve a problem, so I'm going to come out and keep solving that problem. Right. Now, and I don't want to undermine, especially a part of the pest control industry and some in the lawn. I mean, there are some one-time absolutely necessary services that are highly profitable for these businesses. So they do it, right? Yep. So as you come in and you see some of these bed bug problems, they're a little higher ticketed, but absolutely necessary to come in and do that one-time job. Wildlife issues. If a wildlife comes in and damages the structure, right? You got to fix the structure, but you're not going to fix that structure every month. So, that it's always going to be there, but they've gotten really good at even taking those one-time break fix type scenarios, right? Those types of services, and saying, we also have ongoing services that are going to help in some other areas of your business, and it's the recurring revenue has been very powerful. So.
Yeah. One of the other things in that line with increasing like wallet share and that out of home are these businesses that do other things. They don't do just your lawn and your pest, but they do your pool, and they're doing all these things. And it's almost like a one-stop shop for all of my home service needs, which from the homeowner side and residential side, for me, I love that, right? Because I get to call Bob. Bob's going to come whenever of my issues in my home he's got it taken care of. And I guess philosophically, conceptually, from the business side, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That makes obvious business sense. But I would imagine it's not as easy as it is in theory, because you can't just put chemicals on someone's lawn because you do it for pests, right? There are other hoops and stuff. Is that right? Because I would imagine other people would be doing this all the time.
Yeah. I mean, look, every problem the homeowner or business owner has, it's not a one solution fits all sort of thing. You've really, integrated IPM, integrated pest management in particular, they really do a good job of just identifying what the problem is, and making sure you go in and just engineer a solution for that customer.
Right.
General pest control management and general on application, that type of general category, if you will. There's definitely programs that you sign up, and that's where we get back to the consistency I talked about. As you look at your business, just make sure you're somewhat consistent in your recurring patterns and the type of service work you did, and win by service, right? Win by growth, win by service, win by having good people. And that's what makes your business valuable and more profitable.
And what about in the last bit of this conversation, like what about opportunities? So like if I'm whether it's lawn or pest, or I'm in this game and I bring you in and I'm like, here's what we got. Here's our business. Got, I'm doing $1 million and, I want to get to 2 or 3 and this is what I got. I know the strategy is all different for every business and every size and everything, but where are there things you're looking at right away, like indicators that you look at as opportunities for growth or for success here? I mean, can you talk a little bit about what you see? And that also could be tied to an opportunity, like there's new technology now coming out, or like what are some things that you would basically look at a business to evaluate their health and say, I think you need to take advantage of these things to really get to that next level?
Yeah, well, look, there's a lot of different companies out there being successful in different ways. There's not one roadmap, right? But when you look at the value of your business, what's consistently being seen is, are you retaining that reoccurring revenue, and are you growing that reoccurring revenue? Your one-time revenue does have a price tag on it. It is worth something, but that reoccurring revenue is worth a lot more. So you've really got to look, getting back to your question, you've really got to look at the model of your business. Are you profitable? A. B, I highly recommend any company to go out and get a good mentor in the business. There's always somebody out there, in most cases, who's done it bigger and faster than what you've done. And there's a lot to learn. So if you attend some of these MPMA events, or even online, blogging and online interviews, you can really meet some fascinating people in the industry who's been there, who's done that. And these industries, amazingly, people share. I have not met really anybody who was not willing to share something, unless you're right in their back door. But on a national scale, there's somebody out there to help you and mentor you, and that says, I've been there and I've done that, and you can make your business model even better. So just know, how is your company built? What are you really good at? What's really going to have that good long-term value of your business that's A, profitable, and B, attractive, if you're going to go to market one day, and just, stay on that path. Don't get too distracted with things that are distracting, if that makes sense, right? They're going to slow down growth. And
right, there's always going to be those things, right? Always.
They are.
Yeah.
There are.
Yeah. What about like staffing and because to me that seems to me one of the most challenging things, right? Especially in this world, because the business is. I would always say, like, once you get cooking, like, like you get some customers, you get some good reviews, you get some good word of mouth. Once you get cooking there will be pest problems, there'll be issues. People are going to call. Then the question becomes, can you meet the demand when they're all calling you, right? When that number becomes the number to call, and the only way to meet the demand is to make sure you can go out and service that demand and take care of the problem in a timely way. And that comes back to your team and your staff. Sure. And if you're in a business that is very, very seasonal, or cyclical, and you have periods where you have a lot more jobs because you haven't built that recurring yet, that becomes a challenge, I imagine, right? So what have you seen in that, and how people are approaching that and trying to retain and keep even through times where it can be a little unstable?
Yeah. I'll share a past story at one of our user groups, and this was probably 10 or 12 years ago. It was the exact same question you just asked me. Right. It's been this.
So it's
challenge.
been this has been a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think recently I've seen it elevate a little more, but it's always been there. And there was one of our users, and he was just really well known in the industry, and people consult with him, and he was kind of a jokester. He was on our panel, and one of the questions that the magazine asked him, because they were running the panel, they said, "How do you solve this problem?" And the guy grinned, and he turned over his shoulder, and he actually looked at Tony Massey and said, "Well, that is so easy to answer. I'm just going to let Tony take the lead on this." And the room started laughing because it's not easy to answer. But I really felt like Tony had it. He was on this panel. He had a really good answer. He says, "You know what? We never stop interviewing." Mm-hmm. He says, even though we may not need somebody today, he just said we're always interviewing. We're always looking, and then even though we may find a really good person, we just try to keep them there. We try to keep them in our back pocket. We try to just always have somebody there that's really going to fit the culture of our company and really accomplish the things we want. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really good answer.
Yeah. So it's
I thought that was a really good answer,
because you never know, right? Like you never know when you might need someone, and you find someone that's a good fit, because it is a fit too, right? It's not just anybody. And in this sort of in this game, in this world, what I always found interesting is that like it's not like where do you people would say like, well, where do I advertise? Who am I advertising for? What's the type of person? You know what I mean? And I said, well, you tell me. You have your business. What's the type of person you're looking for? Because if your training is right, you can get somebody trained up, I would imagine. Interesting, I forget who I was talking to on an interview on the show. They were talking about veterans as like a real strong focus in the industry. People are looking to veterans because you have, they've gone out into a field, they're interacting with people, right? So and I thought about that, and I've heard about this in the industry before, and I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. There's veterans looking for work. Are you seeing that in the industry in this bit? Like, yeah.
I mean, the MPMA has an internal organization called PestVet. It's like an internal group within the MPMA that helps promote, and they've seen a lot of success there.
Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of different tracks of folks in the industry like, hey, like this channel worked really well. I heard a guy one time said we were looking people that had a biology degree because they kind of had an interest in biology and organisms, and he's like, through the years we found some really good quality people that generated into management, and then other folks, I've heard recently it comes down to, they're these technicians, they're family people. I mean, geez, if they could just be off work at 2 or 3 o'clock when their kids get off school, like to them that's valuable. So we just created a flex schedule for them, right? And we were able to retain some talent. I've heard that. And these are just a few examples, but the industry, they're reaching. And they're starting to realize just people are very valuable, and it just I don't want to use the word penalized, but it really hurts them when they lose somebody because they got to retrain. And then the customers, and I even had a customer one time tell me, he says, it took me a long time to realize that my technician almost doesn't really even need to kill any bugs or make the grass green. He just needs to talk to the customer, make sure the customer really likes him and connects with him. Right. Or her.
And is knowledgeable. It comes across as knowledgeable, right? Because that's like, I got to tell you, it really matters. Like I have a pest control company that I work with and a lawn company. And the pest control company, it's the same technician who's been coming to my house for years now. Same kid. He's a younger guy. Very friendly. Obviously, he knows me. He knows my house. He knows the problems as to which I had. And it's the analogy still of the doctor. Like it's your primary care physician analogy. I know him. He knows me. She knows me. So he comes to my house, and when he talks to me, I feel better. I feel good. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what's going on? I know him by name. So that matters. And if he were to all of a sudden the next time not show up at my house, and it was the same brand, same shirt, but a different person, it would make me think something. And that's the point. You don't want the customer to think too much. You just want them to, yes, come on in. Here's your payment. I'm done, right? You don't want people to be like, well, wait, why wasn't that guy? And then I'm like, and then you start going down that, what do I do about this expense rabbit? So it does matter. So to your point, like, if you have them, keep them, because it's much easier to keep, right, than to sort of bring them in. And that's a narrative I've been hearing a lot.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's really, really tough because it is a competitive industry. There's a lot of companies out there. They're all charging similar rates. So I think every company would love to say, I want to get a premium for my services, therefore I can pay my people better, therefore I can retain them better, but there is a competitiveness of the industry that's there as well. And they've got to be competitive. So just keeping technicians, keeping office staff, keeping managers, having that consistency, it's a tough nut to crack. It's something that the industry, is always looking at and always fishing for ideas.
Yep.
So
last question before we go, because the time happens and goes so quick, always. You have kids, right? Are they going to go into this world? Are they going to be in the industry or no? What do you think? Have they explicitly said anything about it to you or no?
I don't know. I mean, my daughter, she's a senior in high school this year. I have a son that's a junior, another son that's in 8th grade. I have a daughter in 5th grade. So I'm, I know it's the industry I have chosen for my path. It's something I've grown up around. I think my kids are just so young; they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But the college visit's been fun with my daughter, and she's asked me some questions about the industry. And my dad got inducted to the PMP Pest Control Hall of Fame. And so my daughter went with me. It was senior thing. She got to go to Boston, and that's cool for a senior.
That's cool. Like, wow, they're really doing. My family's important.
Yeah. So, but she got to go to kind of a work event and see him inducted, and see me talk to just different business leaders I've known for a while at the event, and so that's really
it's
for
funny,
a senior
Andy,
in high school.
It's funny. Like I would say, there's a point where your kids possibly recognize you for something else rather than just being like a dad, or just like all this stuff that you give and have. And then they're just like, oh, you have to work for that. Like what? And then I have a 10-year-old and he's not there yet at all. Right. He sees me doing stuff and he'll ask random questions. In fact, it's interesting. Like my mom is a retired school teacher, and she retired at COVID, and so they didn't have the ceremony for her until a little bit after. So we went, and I remember sitting there. I don't know if you had this experience maybe when you were watching your dad be inducted, but like I see all these people get up and say all of these wonderful things about how great of a teacher my mom was, right? And you don't ever think about your parent, or I've never thought about my mom as like a great teacher. Not to say I didn't think she was, but like she's my mom. I don't think about her, how she helps all of these students every day, and how she's helped her colleagues along the way, and like being a mentor to other young teachers. And you hear all of this and you're like, wow, like you're proud of your mom for doing all these things. But I think it takes some time to look at your parents in that way. So I imagine that was a really cool thing to see for your dad.
Yeah, it was neat.
Yeah,
it was cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Well, I want to thank Andy for joining us today. Remind everybody out there that for more info on this show, you can go to BeFieldFamous.com. Tell your friends, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, and remember, your success is fame worthy. So come tell your story. Andy, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.